Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Wagstaff, and I am the Group Business Intelligence Manager here at DCC Technology. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. Today, we're going to look at three important areas of business intelligence for the group. First of all, we're going to look at what market data we now have access to as a group, where to find it and how to get to it, and that will be led by Alif Sabar, the Group Business Intelligence Analyst. The second section will be a masterclass from GfK's Carl West on how to use market data in your day-to-day business. And thirdly, we'll take a look at some of the ways DCC Technology is already using market data. We have Justin Christie from Condor's Research and Development team, and we have Stephen Casey, the Finance and Development Director from DCC Technology. Over to you, Alif.
Hello. I want to give you a very quick look through all the different types of data and reports that DCC Technology has and how you can get access to them. So the first type of data is called shipments, and shipments are all the units shipped by the vendor, whether they end up directly with the end users or they go through resellers and distributors. And shipments will usually be estimated rather than tracked, and that means that market research companies will conduct interviews and calls with the vendors and players all across the channel, and they'll collect some publicly available information and historical data, and they'll put all that into a model that they've built that gives them the estimates for the shipments. So what that means to us is that the shipments number are not 100% accurate. Rather, we should use them as a very good estimate to the size of the market and the trends within the market. So shipments will also be available in volume and in value. And depending on the size of the market, they might sometimes be broken down to a vendor and product level. So this is, for example, the EMEA infrastructure shipments from Canalys, and it's broken down by the top 5 infrastructure vendors within the EMEA region. Some companies will also offer high-level shipment forecasts. So, for example, here we see a forecast for the PC market from Canalys also. And with forecasting, obviously, there's a lot more mathematical modeling involved. And it's important for us to understand the definitions and assumptions built into these models that generate the forecasts. So, for example, this is the assumptions sheet that came with the previous PC market forecast. And it's important to understand these assumptions and the degree that they impact the total forecast with. So you can make your own judgment to how accurate this forecast really is. Some of the companies we get data from for shipments include Canalys, and the nice thing about Canalys is that they cover a good range of the markets we operate in, and we receive 3 different types of data from them. So we receive your normal Excel files, and these will include EMEA shipments and forecast for every market, but they will only be for EMEA, and that's including the Middle East. Also, we receive slide decks that will have worldwide analysis on a certain market or vendor. And these are very, very popular in DCC Technology because they're very clear and clean, straight to the point, and they're very easy to adopt and use into our internal or external discussions. And finally, we receive regular email updates from Canalys to summarize major events or trends in the industry. So if there's a big conference on a certain market, we receive a summary sheet for them, and that is very, very helpful for us to keep track of the industry events. Some other companies we receive data from include Avixa, which is a worldwide trade association for the AV market, and we receive shipments and forecasts from them. We have future source data on the UK home audio, headphones, and hard drives markets. We receive worldwide shipments for VR and AR from a company called Superdata, and we have limited access to the UK PCs shipments data from IDC. And the second type of data is distribution data. And distribution data is sellout data down to invoice and SKU level. So we could treat distribution data as reliable and accurate because it's actual sellout data rather than estimates like the shipments. And distribution data gives us a clear idea of our market share and how we are performing against our competition. And we use a market research company called Context for our distribution data in the EU. And that is because, first of all, they have the largest verifiable panel in the EU, and this is their European panel. And the size of the panel is a very important factor in determining the accuracy of distribution data, because the more distributors that share their data with a market research company, the more coverage they have of the market and the more accurate their numbers are. Contexts are not perfect. They are missing some key players in certain markets, especially in France, but they do share their panel. They're transparent about it, so we know who's included and who's missing. And even though they don't have a perfect panel, they are still very powerful, especially in our major categories and markets. And the second reason we use them is they have a very good service level, especially their ClickView app. As you can see, there are multiple ways you can slice and dice the data and look at your numbers from different angles. And because the data is down to a SKU and invoice level, there's some limited data on SKU level, especially in the top sellers report. And as you can see here, there are a lot of numbers here that are blocked and the product name is other. And that is mainly due to confidentiality rules that protect the exclusive or the leading distributors of a certain brand or vendor. So for example, all the products blocked here and put under other are Huawei smartphones that we distribute. And so this is to protect us basically from our competition being able to estimate how many, let's say, Huawei phones we sold in the last year. And Context is a very powerful partner to have for us, because they sell their data to a lot of the vendors. So they are the language of the vendors. A lot of the vendors will judge their performance and our performance in the channel based on the context number. So it's very good to have that data to be able to use it in your discussions with your vendors. The last type of data is the data that tracks sales from resellers to end users, and it's broken down to two types depending on the type of the end user. So there's B2B data, and we have limited access to that data through context, and there's retail data that tracks sales from physical and digital retailers to end users. And GfK is widely recognized as being the best market research company for retail, and specifically for CE and IT products, which are obviously our main categories. And like we said about context being the language of distribution, GfK is the language of retail. So a lot of our retail partners will use GfK in their discussions with us. The unfortunate thing, however, is that GfK data is very expensive to buy, so we have limited access to their data. For example, we have a UK mobile accessories data that we pay for, and we receive a monthly UK-only Market Eye report that tracks durable sales across retail. And here are a few slides from one of their Market Eye reports. And this is again for the UK only, but if you require GfK data for your markets or categories, we are more than happy to assist you in your discussions with GfK. So finally, this is kind of an overview of the levels of distribution with the types of data in each one and the companies we use to track those types of data. So finally, how could you get access to all of this wonderful data and reports that we have? Well, we've put everything into a business intelligence SharePoint library, and we update this library on a daily basis, and the reports inside are categorized by market research company and then by category. So for example, this is how the library looks right now, and you can see all the market research companies we've talked about on top. And if you go into Canalys, for example, you will see all the markets that they track and we receive the data for. And if you don't really know what market research company you are looking for, or maybe the thing you're looking for might be across multiple market research companies, you could use the SharePoint search function to look at a specific keyword across all the folders and the market research companies that we have. So if you want to have access to this library, please contact myself or Jonathan. I will be more than happy to give you access to it.
Thanks, Alif. Very helpful. Just a quick message to our North American colleagues. We have limited access at the moment to North American data, but are in the process of setting up with NPD, who are the equivalent of Context in North America. So hopefully we'll have more for you later this year. We have here today in our next segment Carl West, who is the Client Success Director from GfK. and he's going to explore some general ideas around how he thinks we should making best use of the data to which we have access. Give us a sort of general overview, a few examples, and then to talk through some of his clients and the success that their data has delivered. So over to you, Carl.
Yeah, thank you. So really, the fundamentals of it are that market data is essentially a way to discover what you don't know. It's also to sense check what you do know, and it independently validates your profit-dependent decisions. So it's essentially filling in the blanks, and even some people with vast amounts of channel experience can often be sidelined or sideswiped from trends and activity that they don't forecast and don't foresee. Typically, clients that we work with are buying into or exchanging data for the benefit of accessing the general macroeconomics of what's going on within a country or within a region. But essentially, the first thing a vendor does when they engage with us or a client, they look at what the total addressable market is, the TAM. So, if you're looking to break into a new market, you need to know what the potential is of that market, so what the volume of that market is, and also the value. Essentially, once you've done that, if you're new to the market, then it's all about share growth. But if you're a mature supplier or you've been in this industry for some time, then it's about monitoring your share within that market, your share in the sense of volume and value. But also when you're looking at channels as well, the dynamics of online and offline within B2B and then retail, and then some really specific verticals as well when you're looking at education, the public sector, and so on. But that's all very well and good in the sense of understanding the total market and what's happening at that level. But then you need to get into the dynamics of the products you have, the products you're able to sell. It's all very well looking at the total market, but if you're looking at, say, for example, TVs, and you only have a 32-inch TV, there's no point looking at the 55-inch plus, because you're going to have a real struggle trying to go after that market. So segmenting the market into things like features and price bands then allows you to really sort of focus on specific areas. And once you've done that, you can create a very accurate white spot analysis. So you can see the opportunities within that country or that region. And then you can review that, your process, your sales campaigns, your marketing campaigns to see whether you've been effective. But overriding that, without just the detail, the general macroeconomics of it is that, as an organization, you're not immune to, the economic, political, and other things that interact with your sales campaigns. So things like, for example, share of wallet. If you're selling a technical consumer good within the UK, then during the summer months, you're going to be impacted by the increased consumer spend with DIY, for example. People go out in the garden, they go and buy bits and pieces for the garden, the outside of the home. Now, whilst it's not seen as direct competition, there is only a certain amount of money that the UK consumer will spend. Now, in the UK in 2018, 2019, it's about 36 to 39 billion. Now, is that going to impact you? Well, if you're a large vendor or a large supplier, then yes, because the people you're selling to are going to be moving some of that spend towards other categories. Now, fundamentally, when you're looking at all of this data together, how is it actually used? The POS data that we have and others provide is essentially a currency in most of our customers, sometimes very much at a top line, just looking at sizing the marking, seeing what it was and extrapolating forward to create a forecast. But it's often used in planning, in merchandising, category management, purchasing, marketing, and importantly, sales, because at the end of the day, this data should be used as an opportunity within a business and not a cost. And what I mean by that, with market data, you can look at behind you and pat yourself on the back if you've done well. That's a cost to your business. Market research data is a way of identifying opportunity and selling more product at a better price. Therefore, it creates an opportunity. So that's kind of some of the background behind the research itself. The different data sets that most market research agencies provide, they can be very useful in a specific niche when you go on to category management. They can be used regards merchandising, compliance, stock fulfillment, stock on shelf, etc. Or it can be, as I say, as a headline, looking at what a region is doing and seeing where the demand of the consumer is going. But ultimately, it's always about where the trend is. Now, sometimes you'll see a brand appear out of nowhere. So at the Far East at the moment, we're seeing brands coming across into the European market. You need to be aware of those brands. New to market brands can surprise a lot of organizations, and quite often they're aggressive in price. So you have to be careful of how you campaign on those prices, because ultimately it affects your bottom line. So that kind of gives you a summary of how the market data typically is used. And when you're looking at the types of clients we have retailers, we have manufacturers, we have wholesalers, we have merchants, each of them interacting with the data in different ways. Some are using it actively on a weekly basis because they have a large product roster that they need to keep track of. Others are dipping into it, pre-season and post-season. But when you're looking at manufacturers, they're typically taking that data set and they're going to retailers and resellers and taking that data as an independent validation of their sales pitch. And it's no surprise that organizations who buy into and use market research data are often more successful at winning bids. In my experience at GfK, we've had distributors and retailers and manufacturers who have bought our data and won business on the back of that. Because as a salesperson, you'll go into a client and say you're the best, but with independent market research data, it validates that. But also the customers you go into want to look at what you're going to do to affect their market share. How are you going to campaign, support in product, and support their bottom line? They don't want to just look at where you are today in a static view. They also want to look at the impact you'll have on them going forward. And to do that, you need to extrapolate out from a timeline in the past. So that's an example of how people use market research data and how typically they're used within our client roster. So when you're looking at market research data, when you're looking at the people who use it within an organization, it's quite common that market research data is typically funded by the marketing department. It's often used as a way of showcasing how well the company is doing. The purchasing department are looking at market research data to see whether they've got the pricing right, they're buying the right products. But one of the challenges has always been trying to get the salespeople using the data. And quite often, because salespeople are very time poor, they're out in front of customers, they're out generating business, for them to stand still for a moment and look at this type of data is often a challenge and quite often a low priority. But when you're looking at pitching for business, it's not enough just to go in there and make claims that this product will cure the issues of a retailer or a reseller. You need to be able to validate that and create a comprehensive business plan, especially when you're looking at the high value bids. It's not enough just to go in there and say, we have these products which answer these needs. You also need to validate that in the sense of, look, is this plan going to work? Is it going to continue to work? And during that campaign, is there the opportunity to review it? So plan, do, and review. Now, salespeople will typically want dashboard. They want high-level key metrics to see whether they're doing well. But sometimes a salesperson in a position where they're given a target, and sometimes they just can't hit that target because the opportunity they are going after isn't great enough. So sometimes it's a way of pushing back, and other times it's used as a way of beating their budgets and their targets. So identifying new opportunities that weren't there at the beginning of the year and going, right, this is an opportunity for me to hit my target, make my commission, and succeed in that year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Carl. If any of you have any more questions for Carl, then do get in touch and I will connect you. Here, Justin Christie, who is the Head of Research, Development and Design at Condor. who was going to say a few things about how they use data and market insights in planning and designing their own brand products.
Hi. Yes. So our quite small team. There's 3 of us in the direct RD&D team, and we are constantly analysing the data which comes in from FutureSource, from GfK, looking for trends within that data to see which features, which price points, specifically which type of products are growing. A really good example of that was party speakers, which we saw coming a couple of years ago. And we used the data from that to kind of carve a couple of little niches within the party speaker market that we thought we saw existing through the data. The Slam XL is a really good example of that product. It's a party speaker. It's 100 watts, retails for $129.99. And I think without having the data to show that that was coming, it probably would have been hard to sell the whole concept to the business as well. We're very keen to see where we are in a market position, and so as soon as the data comes in, we kind of pore over it, seeing how well we're doing, and if we need to take action on any type of a product. It's good to see how the competitors are doing as well. Or so some brands we see as competitors, and some brands are sort of symbiotic partners within the distribution space, the other brands that we're distributing. So it's a balancing act to make sure that we're giving those guys the room they need to survive and succeed, as well as creating a space for our own brand.
And how do you use data when you're forecasting as well? Because obviously when you're looking to place your orders with the factories in China, how would you use data to inform when you're making those kind of decisions?
Those kind of decisions are driven from our internal data. So the data which comes from the retailers in terms of sales out, but then also indicative volumes which they're giving us when we're kind of collaborating throughout the product development. We'll show the retailers quite early on in the development cycle. Once we've got an idea for a product at a spec, at a price point, at a feature set, when that's at a position where we're ready to quickly commercialize that, we will share those concepts with the retailers, and then they'll provide us indicative volumes from that. Once the line is live and sales are ongoing, then the forecast is driven by our supply chain, who are analyzing sales out from the retailers.
Right. Okay. Do you work with any of the major research houses on a consultative basis? So would you rely on, say, a session maybe a couple of times a year or every so often with the GfK analysts? Would you sort of rely on them on a consultative basis with subjective feedback on where they think the market's going, or what sort of products would be the next big thing or going out?
Yeah, exactly. So they come down with the data sharing that we're doing. They come down twice a year or once a year to present to us, and they'll give us a really nice sort of overview of where they think we are as a brand and where they see our opportunities as a brand, some kind of white space thinking that they've done around our strengths and some trends that they're seeing emerging in the market.
If you didn't have access to the data, what sort of impact do you think that would have on your day-to-day business?
I think it would impact us quite heavily in 2 areas. One, we would have to use a lot more guesswork in terms of where we're pitching the features of products, where we're going with price points, and we'd have to do a lot more work going out, looking store by store to see what's out there. But we'd kind of be blind as to what is successful in the market and how to shape our decisions based on the success of other products, price points and features. And then from another level, it's hard to justify a product to a retailer without the data to back it up. And that's where we find this data very useful.
In discussions with your retailers, do you feel that it gives you an edge over your competition within distribution, being able to speak the language of the market? Do you feel that it gives you more credibility as a distributor when you're having those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this data is something that the retailers are insisting on in order to help them shape their decisions. So without it, they feel blind, and they feel that what they're doing is guesswork. And when we're going to them and we're illustrating a really compelling story, which is with this data, it makes their job a lot easier, and it makes our job a lot easier getting them to select the lines we want them to select that we know are going to succeed because we've shaped those lines based on the data. I see the role of data as absolutely pivotal in the future growth. I'd envisage us using artificial intelligence and taking all of the metrics of the products which we're supplying into the channel and combining that with the sales data we're getting from the rest of the channel, even looking at it on a global basis, and then using that to shape not only our product feature specification and price decisions, but then also the supply chain build decisions, and where we're going to be applying the stock across what is now quite a large group, and how we can maximize the data that we're getting from other areas of the group. If someone is seeing something in a local market do something really well that's of a certain price spec feature that we have got in this market that's not doing so well, then we can redeploy that product into that market in order to maximize the profitability for the group. And with the right data in the right place, it's going to make our jobs a lot easier to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Justin. We now move on to Stephen Casey, the Finance and Development Director for DCC Technology.
First question here for you. What sort of market data do you receive, or have you started receiving since the BI function started a year or so ago in your role?
Well, one of the main things we focus on is the market share data, which comes out of context, and that's used by the group management and fed up then into DCC group management and indeed to the PLC board. I think IT distribution is relatively unique in the sense that we get really strong market share data to give us a good sense as to how we're performing in various product categories. So the nature of the industry is that you can have very strong growth rates in particular categories for a period of time. So while we can see a 10% share increase in a particular category without knowing how the market is performing, it's very difficult to know whether that's good or bad. So the market share data is something we look at, we share amongst the management team, and we really use as one of the key drivers of how we manage the business. We have identified particular product categories in terms of areas that we would like to focus on and expand on. So typically when it comes to a particular acquisition, we would use the BI function to do a deeper dive into particular product categories. That might be Pro AV and the recent acquisitions of Stampede in the US and Comtech in Germany, allowing us to understand the dynamics of those markets, how strongly they're growing, and importantly how the acquisition target is growing in that market, and then compare that against our own businesses, not necessarily obviously in those geographies, but our own businesses, maybe in the UK or in the Nordics or in France, for example.
Great, that's very helpful. How would you like to see the use of market data evolve within DCC Technology this year and going forward?
Well, I'd love to see, it becoming market share data becoming the key, the main KPI that we look at monthly reviews, so that the management teams are referring back to market share data, if you like, impartial market share data on a regular basis. And we do that, I think, in spots around the business, but probably not on a consistent basis. So, for people to be able to quote, well, we're plus 10, 15% in the Nordics this month in Pro AV, but the market was plus 5% or plus 20%. And that really helps us to understand then the relative performance against our competitors, whether we're winning or losing, what we're doing right or wrong, and what actions we can take to change if needed.
That's great. What would your advice be to the various DCC technology teams around the globe on using market data? Is there any tips, anything you've learned in your time as the function has started to build that you'd like to share?
Well, I think one of the key things is that with the development of the SharePoint site now is we have a fantastic library that's available for people to use. So the primary thing is to encourage people to engage with that we have the data there. We have a function that is collecting this information and making it available to the management team. So there's really no excuse for not using the data. So please do engage with it. And please do expect to be questioned on it, I suppose, as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen Casey, Development and Financial Director for DCC Technology. Just want to thank all of our contributors today. So Justin, Alif, Carl and Stephen. Just to reiterate, if you want access to the BI library and database, please reach out to myself or Alif. And don't forget to ask your analysts. We are here to help. If you're not sure on anything, you want us to help prep the data, show you what it means, how to understand it, do reach out to us.